Dry though, but there will still be the odd shower around. And as we go into the middle part of the week, very little changes. Largely dry, often cloudy, but feeling cold in the wind.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. It's 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Also, former Labour MP Stephen Pound. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 4. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. Ireland's Taoiseach Leo Varadkar says a deal on the Northern Ireland Protocol could be made in the next few days, but there's still a gap to be closed in negotiations. It comes as the Prime Minister faces criticism after proposing a meeting between King Charles and the President of the European Commission. Ursula von der Leyen was due to continue talks with Rishi Sunak in person before meeting the King, but her trip was cancelled. Labour says it would have had constitutional implications. Speaking exclusively to GB News, the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly said the government was looking for cross-community support for any protocol deal.
We remain focused on the outcome rather than the method, and the outcome is to protect Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom, to make sure that people and businesses and the political representatives of those people in Northern Ireland are comfortable with the resolution, whilst also making sure that we protect the UK internal market. Those are very much our motivations. That's what will drive our actions.
Most members of the G20 have condemned the war in Ukraine with a joint declaration, except for China and Russia, who both refused to sign. Finance chiefs in the world's 20 largest economies have been meeting in India and issued a closing statement at the end of the summit. It comes as Ukraine's president says he plans to meet China's Xi Jinping after Beijing set out a peace plan for the war between Ukraine and Russia. Volodymyr Zelensky told a news conference in Kyiv it would be beneficial for both countries and for security around the world.
It's correct to think that if there are already thoughts that somehow correspond to respect for international law, territorial integrity and some security issues, I believe we should use this and work with China on this matter. Why not? I want to believe that China will be on the side of a fair peace, which means on our side. This is very important to me. I really want to believe that China will not supply weapons to Russia.
The number of people who've been killed in the earthquakes that have hit Turkey and Syria have now surpassed 50,000. The United Nations estimates that the destruction has left 1.5 million people homeless, with 500,000 new homes needed. President Erdogan has pledged to rebuild homes within the year, but experts are warning authorities to put safety before speed to ensure that new buildings can withstand further tremors. Well, a 3.7 magnitude earthquake was felt in South Wales last night. The British Geological Survey says it hit Bryn Mawr near Crickhowell just before midnight, with the tremor felt as far away as Cardiff. Residents on social media have described being woken up to their whole house shaking. Hundreds have gathered in County Tyrone to demand an end to violence in Northern Ireland after the attempted murder of an off-duty policeman. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was shot outside a sports centre on Wednesday. He remains in a critical condition. The local football club where Mr Caldwell is a volunteer have also gathered in solidarity. 5 suspects have been arrested and detectives say the incident is being treated as terror-related, with the new IRA their main line of inquiry. The Defence Secretary says he's confident that the troubled £5.5 billion programme to build new army tanks has turned a corner. The project to build nearly 600 Ajax fighting vehicles has faced criticism over severe delays and technical issues. After nearly 13 years, it's yet to deploy a single tank. Ben Wallace says soldiers are now being trained in how to use them and hopes they'll be active in the military within the next 2 years.
Well, when I took over as Secretary of Defence 3.5 years ago, this was a troubled programme. It started its life in March 2010, and I was determined that we were either going to fix this or have to find alternatives. And so we put a lot of effort into it. We worked with General Dynamics, the prime contractor, and with the Army. And, you know, I think after its user trials that it completed at Christmas time, you know, it started to turn a corner.
And thousands of displaced Ukrainians are being given the chance to go to the Eurovision Song Contest in May. Around 3,000 tickets will be made available to those who are currently living in the UK. Liverpool has been chosen to host on behalf of Ukraine, who won last year. The government has announced £10 million in funding to make sure that the event showcases Ukrainian culture. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It is fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is a GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. If they thought the heavily regulated British press were bad, the Duke and Duchess of Montecito ain't seen nothing yet, because the American press and media are a whole lot worse. They don't have Ofcom, who would have no doubt questioned that misleading Netflix trailer. That's great when the US press are on your side. But unfortunately for the pair, spare, or should I say, was I'm afraid the straw that broke the camel's back in South Park did not hold back.
We are here because privacy is a basic human right. How many more princes and his wives have to live in this nightmare?
That was like the ball was hitting me, wasn't it? Harry and Meghan have been mocked all around the world, courtesy of South Park's Worldwide Privacy Tour, which featured 2 characters with a striking resemblance to the couple. I'm afraid it would be hard for any serious business person to look the 2 of them in the eye without seeing the South Park parody in the corner and laugh in their faces. I mean, it is frankly hilarious. Meghan, it was reported, was apparently upset, although a representative for them denied that they were considering a lawsuit against South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone, calling the speculation nonsense. And in the latest poll conducted for Newsweek in the States, it showed that since their South Park takedown, Meghan and Harry's popularity has sunk even lower than that of Prince Andrew.
He's right. Trying to make ourselves into a brand just turned us into products. We don't need to be a brand, do we? If it's truly what we want, then we really can get away from it all. No more magazines and Netflix shows. We really can live a normal life. Yes, I'm sure you agree, darling. We can be the people we talked about being, with no more worries about how we look or the image we project to people. What matters is what we have on the inside.
How did they get away with that?
You see, by all means, walk away from a life of privilege and untold comfort and riches to carve your own niche. The principle itself is admirable. But if carving your own niche involves destroying the thing that gave you life and made you credible, your family, be prepared to lose everything. It's simple, really. In my view, the vast majority of people are intrinsically good, regardless of who or what they stand for, irrespective of whether they believe in a monarchy or not. Most people don't like to see others cashing in on treachery. Treachery laced with arrogance and victimhood. As far as I can see, they've sold everything now, including their integrity. I mean, what's left? Harry is now resorting to whinging via live stream, which you can pay for the privilege to hear and submit a question. He's even chucking in a copy of Where. Talk about scraping the barrel. It's all over for the Duke and Duchess of Montecito. Once you've destroyed your intrinsic value, what remains is worthless. There's simply nothing left. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is net zero to blame for food shortages? Now, supermarket shelves are empty as shortages of fruit and veg have been affecting major shopping chains. And this comes as the government continue to push their net zero agenda further. Now, farmers are now only able to access government funding if they reach high environmental standards, much to the detriment of food producers. However, others have blamed the shortages on the lack of food security on Brexit. So will going green mean there are no greens? Then at 4:50, it's Royal Roundup time. Royal biographer Angela Levin will be in the studio to give us the latest from behind palace walls. A new poll, which I mentioned earlier, has revealed that Prince Harry and Meghan's popularity has tanked, plummeting lower than Prince Andrew's. Now, this comes as you saw the release of the South Park episode that mocked the couple over their need for privacy. Then stay tuned at 5. It's this week's difficult conversation. Social media influencer Ollie London will be in the studio live to tell me all about his journey, about his struggles with self-identity that eventually led him to detransition back to a man after spending 6 months as a transgender female. He'll be live in the studio to challenge the very core of the woke gender ideology movement. All of that on the way in the next hour. Tell me what you think as ever on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also Labour MP, former Labour MP Stephen Pound. Welcome, Stephen. Behave yourself.
Stephen's back. The rose between two thorns.
Never ever talk between the monologue, just so you know.
Right, absolutely not.
Exactly. I mean, what happened? What did you have for breakfast? Did you have the Collins Dictionary? Because you haven't stopped talking since I've seen you.
No. My dad always used to like to have a bit of whiskey on his porridge. He used to say it's a breakfast whiskey. But no, I just had it because it has its length. I just had ordinary porridge. No. I can't believe that where I am today. I mean, who would have thought that one day
there you go.
Actually achieve the heights of being here.
Dreams do come true.
The other day, weren't you? Actually,
yeah, well, I know, but I wasn't between pink and pinker.
What do you think then? Let's start with Lizzie, because Lizzie's actually met Meghan Markle before. I mean, I laughed out loud when I saw that, because obviously America have lost interest as well.
Well, I said this last week, didn't I, Nana? They have lost it, not just here, but over the pond as well. They totally underestimated how we feel and how loyal we are to the royal family, but just not in this country, but over there where they had to make it. And slowly their popularity is going down the toilet. And don't sweat it, Andrew. Do you know what? They're more disliked than you. Who would have thought it?
There's a fairly low bar.
Well, it is, but it really is. And I'm sorry, all the whinging and moaning and trashing the royal family has now come to bite them in the bottom, I'm afraid.
I think "Don't sweat it, Andrew" is one of the great lines. Well done there.
Thank you, thank you.
Very good, actually.
Thank you. Yes.
You see what she did there?
Very good.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, but you can monetise misery only so far. You can monetise grievance only so far. But I think you actually put your finger on it. The difference between the rapacious, vulpine American press and our rather more conservative. I mean, it ain't going to be Oprah Winfrey for them.
No.
No, she's not going to let them back on, especially after she's almost embarrassed Oprah by going, well, when Harry went, what?
No, but
Racism? Yeah, no, racism.
Protect me, Harry, protect me. But, I mean, fair play to South Park. I thought they were pretty good when they got Isaac Hayes to sing, to do the voice.
Well, it was hilarious. I mean, that's how we all feel, though, when he was like, looked inside her, there was nothing there, because this is what they want. They said they wanted privacy, yet they do every interview possible going. She's on every front cover. They're bleating and moaning when we're in, look at what's going on in this country at the minute. People are fleeing from the Ukraine. Really, are we supposed to feel sorry for them? I think that I don't know anyone that actually does anymore, and I think their time has come. What do
you think they're going to do, Stephen? Because, Harry's got, and I've just seen it on GBNews website, it literally just came in about an hour ago, that Harry is now going to be doing sort of another whinge fest on some live stream in a couple of days' time, where he'll talk a little bit about the book and talk about his loss and this and that, and then he's going to... look...
Well, there's a kind of a precedent here.
Yeah.
I mean, the Duke of Windsor and Wallis Simpson, I mean, there's a number of, obviously none of you remember, but going right back to the 1930s. And when the Duke of Windsor abdicated the throne, went off, and they found him a nice little niche, I think, as governor of Bermuda.
Bermuda's lovely.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely.
Nice
Who wouldn't want to be governor of Bermuda? But in his case, it could be South Georgia.
I don't even think that.
He's governor of the Falkland Islands.
Well, maybe, because I don't think that the Americans aren't going to tolerate it anymore. It was the gaslighting with the racism card, which they did gaslight, because if somebody's judging you based on the colour of your skin, or a decision is made because somebody's skin, or depending on how dark someone's skin is, that is the very description of a level of racism.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to then say nobody said racism...
Their lifestyle's incredibly expensive at the moment. They don't have the level of security when they're over there. And this is the classic case of having, wanting to have your Victoria sponge and eating it. Because what they're saying is they do not want to be part of the royal family in this country. They don't want to contribute to it. They don't want to do all the work that Princess Anne and Prince Andrew... Not Prince Andrew, but, the Duke of Kent and everybody does. But on the other hand, they want all the benefits that accrue from that. The hypocrisy is breathtaking.
But what's so sad about this, it could have been so much different.
Victor's Games were a brilliant idea.
Well, yes, indeed. And when Meghan first came on the scene, I thought she was going to be the new Princess Diana. I mean, she was welcome. The press loved her. She had more. Well, she had more positive press than Kate in the beginning. And look how it's ended. And this is their own doing. I mean, if they just couldn't find their own identity. They just had to keep moaning and groaning and selling their own family down the river.
If they dare to bring out the race card, yes, some people are racist, yes, but nothing has hindered her, because she's actually married to a prince who was the second in line to the throne, and then obviously William had all the children, so he's now, 6th or 7th or whatever it is. But she married somebody who is at the top of this society in this country. There can be literally no one higher, apart from if you go to the king or something. So to even claim that, my race has been terrible for me, it's like, no. If that is racism, give it to me. That.
And I think
because I don't mind that.
And I think Oprah will be really cross with her, because she was thinking she's getting the scoop, and actually, who is this racist royal? There wasn't.
They've not.
And it's not fair. And I have to say, what Harry's done, he's acted like a petulant child, but he's actually put his own family in danger by talking about the 25 Taliban. And if he comes to the coronation, there will be a coronation of King Charles. He hasn't made his mind up whether he's coming yet or no, leaving them hanging. But seriously, he's putting the whole royal family in jeopardy.
The trouble is, she's like a pound shop Gwyneth Paltrow now. I mean, I'm expecting to get the scented candle soon.
Oh, God, let's hope not.
I hope not.
Stephen, on that note... Sorry. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, on TV, online and on digital radio. You probably know what scented candle he's talking about.
Can we move on?
Where the scent came from. You started it.
Told you'd be trouble.
Great British debate this hour. I'm asking, is net zero to blame for food shortages? Now, supermarket shelves, in many cases, are emptying of their contents of fruit and vegetable. And this comes as there's been poor food production, which has been caused by the government's limiting financial support that they gave to farmers if they failed to reach ridiculously high environmental targets. All of this in its pursuit of net zero, so stay tuned for that. And at 4:50, it's Royal Roundup time. Royal biographer Angela Levin will be live to talk to us all things Meghan and Harry. Send me your thoughts as ever. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tell me what you think. You can also tweet at GBNews. I've got a poll up right now asking, is net zero to blame for supermarket shortages? Cast your vote now. Do not go anywhere.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, it is fast approaching 21 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you just join me wherever you've been, no monologue emails for Harry and Meghan. That is the shape of things to come. Well done, people. Right, I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's now time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is net zero to blame for supermarket shortages? Now, supermarkets like Asda, Morrison's, they've been rationing fruit and veg by placing limits on the number of cucumbers, lettuce and tomatoes that people can buy. Now, the reason for this, well, poor harvests in Spain and North Africa due to cold weather. And there's also a farming crisis in this country, which is caused by high energy costs, which have led to a lack of fresh produce. Plus, since the UK left the EU, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, otherwise known as DEFRA, has replaced the EU's Common Agricultural Policy with the Environment Land Management Scheme. And the new scheme gives farmers financial incentives on conditions that they adopt higher environmental and sustainability standards in line with the net zero green agenda. So the high standards include things like the preservation of trees, shrubs and wildlife, which is all very laudable, but to the detriment of encouraging the production of food. However, Remainers blame Brexit, surprise, surprise. Now, this is despite the significant proportion of the UK's fresh produce coming from Morocco, a non-EU member. So, what do you think? for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is net zero to blame the supermarket shortages? Well, joining me now is senior meteorologist at British Weather Services, Jim Dale, Lois Perry, director of Car26, landowner and columnist Jamie Blackett, and former Labour Minister for Europe, Dennis McShane. I'm going to start with you, Jamie, because, Jamie, it was your article in The Telegraph that sort of prompted me to ask this question, because you felt that actually net zero had a lot to blame for this. Why did you think that?
Yeah, well, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, the first thing, obviously, is the cold weather in not hot weather, you'll note, down in southern Spain and North Africa, where we get a lot of our vegetables from. But, you know, we should be growing a lot more of our own fruit and veg in this country. It is quite possible, actually, with the new technology, hydroponics and that kind of thing, to grow tomatoes and peppers and things. It's just that British farmers haven't really had the confidence to invest in glass houses and that kind of thing. We've outsourced that sort of production really to the Dutch, who have stolen a march on us, and the Spanish, because DEFRA, the green blob in DEFRA, don't really believe in food production. You know, that we're wedded to this model of relying on being able to buy food from anywhere else in the world. And surprise, surprise, you know, this week we've been caught out. It's partly our imperial past. We need to, if you like, decolonize our food strategy and concentrate more on growing it at home rather than being able to buy it anywhere else. And yes, you're right. The civil servants really give the impression, anyway, that they would like farmers to do almost anything other than grow food on their land. So there are a lot of, you know, mixed messages there. And if you're sitting here as a farmer wondering whether you're going to go and borrow hundreds of thousands of pounds to invest in upscaling your production or diversifying into growing new things, you're not really getting the right signals from government. And that is partly to do with net zero and this obsession with trying to save the world in one country, and planting trees on land that would otherwise be growing food, or putting solar panels on prime arable land that could be growing food.
Well, let's bring Jim Dale. I want to bring Jim in. Jim Dale, let me just bring Jim in. You're a meteorologist. He's saying that they're using a lot of that arable land to put solar panels on there. You probably get wind farms on there. In fact, these things could actually be used for growing food instead of us importing from other places.
Net zero is not the reason for deficiencies in the UK market at all. It's net zero is an evolution, not a revolution. It's a slow fuse, if you like. So this has happened in very quick time. What has happened in Morocco and Spain? Yeah, there's been some bad weather around, but you've got to think to yourself: cucumbers, tomatoes, raspberries. Most of these crops are grown undercover. They're not necessarily exposed to the weather per se. There has been bad weather, but it's tended to be away from these big agricultural areas. So if there is a deficiency, what it's showing up is the logistics in terms of moving those things. If a wagon driver wants to take their produce from, say, southern Spain to wherever it's going to go, they're going to choose countries that are a lot closer, rather than having to go through the red tape that has now arrived with Brexit and other elements of this, rather than go to the UK. So kind of, in a way, it's an amalgamation of things, and it only starts with the weather per se, but only in a very small way.
But if those incentives weren't there, and they were instead of building solar panels and stuff like that, we could grow stuff on our own land. Lois Perry.
Yeah, I mean, this just highlights the fact that we need to be energy independent and food independent. You know, it's completely disingenuous saying this is about red tape. It may be because it costs so much in fuel for the stuff to be transported. But, you know, if we were actually producing our own energy and producing our own food, this wouldn't be happening at all. Net zero as an ideology isn't a creeping, slow thing, like you just said. It's actually a revolutionary thing that wants to completely annihilate what most of us take for granted as our way of life. But you're right, we could be growing food in this country if the energy prices weren't so high. Just wanted to make one quick point, Nana. One of the reasons that we were not allowed to frack is because Quadrilla went over 0.5 on the Richter scale. This morning in Wales, there was an earthquake of 3.7, didn't cause that much damage. That's 63,000 times stronger in terms of the energy impact than what the fracking was allowed or not allowed to do. That was the reason they used for us not having our own energy. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Right, let's go to Dennis McShane.
Well, thanks, Nana. I didn't bring in with me but a lovely little map I wanted to show on the studio, which showed all the countries of Europe where you can buy tomatoes, cucumbers, raspberries without any problem at all. Northern ones, southern ones, net zero ones, left-wing ones, right-wing ones. And the one country where we're imposing Second World War type food rationing is our beloved Britain. Now, I like turnips. I was with Therese Coffey when she said, let them eat turnips. That's why we voted Brexit in 2016. It was to have more turnips in the British diet. But seriously, the problem is, if you're a Dutch lorry driver, which brings a lot of tomatoes and other stuff to here, it is cheaper and quicker to drive all the way to Portugal than to navigate the Brexit delays. That
Dennis, can I say, I think you just highlighted the fact that we've been reliant too heavily on our European partners, and therefore, because we've been doing that within the EU and transporting things, where some of those things, tomatoes, we can grow in this country. And the problem, the reason we're not, is because we're sacrificing a lot of land for other things and incentivising...
Well, it's not just that. Think about where we are. We're in the middle of winter. It's not been... Yeah, we had December, we had the troll from the Trondheim come down. That was a difficulty. But the producers in this country are not turning their energy on for the cost reasons, to be frank.
Because of renewables, because renewables are so much...
Nothing to do with it.
It's completely because of renewables, because we're making our grid intermittent by having to rely on these renewable energies by law, and so therefore we're pushing the price of all of our fuel up, whether it's gas. Everything is going up because of this renewable scam. It really is to do with net zero. The Telegraph journalist is absolutely right. Across the board, it really is.
Well, other countries of net zero, much tougher, stricter net zero, they've still got tomatoes in their supermarkets.
Well, they might be hot.
Yeah, but that's, I think, partly the reason why we have lack of that is because we have been relying on these countries so much. I want to come back to Jim. Jim, look, I mean, you know, you're talking about the weather. It would be better if it was warmer.
We're getting there. I'll say.
Well, we haven't had any warming for 10 years, unfortunately.
Just going forward, and it's a bit of a weather forecast, if you like. We've been looking for this cold weather coming in. It's going to actually go into Europe rather than ourselves. So that's where the cold weather is going to go in the next fortnight or so. We're on the fringes of it. It's never going to be paradise. Look, let's make it clear where we are at this moment in time. The major problem that we've got going forward is actually drought. Some of the southeastern areas, particularly east and southeast, no rain. So that's going to be another problem coming in summertime.
Just say, you know why that is? Because we've invested in these water companies that are actually elsewhere. We haven't built any more reservoirs. We could have caught loads of that rain. Let's go to... I want to have a chat with Jamie Blackett. I mean, look, you know, you've heard the arguments here that actually it's more to do with Brexit. Is there any level of that might be true? Because in my view, I think actually the fact that we were in the EU made us lazy.
I don't think you can really blame Brexit too much for this. I mean, I've actually been following this a bit on social media. There are shortages in some other countries as well. And I think where Brexit, I think, has been a bit of an issue for us farmers is finding labour. And obviously the fruit and veg is very, very labour dependent. And I think that has been a problem. I don't think it's necessarily Brexit per se. It's just the way that the politicians have, not seized the opportunities of Brexit. They've rather held back the agricultural sector by not doing the necessary things to provide us with the labour, either sort of getting people off benefits and into work, or allowing us to use unskilled foreign labour. I mean, whatever way you go about it, we are short of labour. I'm a dairy farmer. It's getting increasingly difficult to find people to milk cows. So I mean, in that sense, I think Brexit, or at least the interpretation of it and the way that it's all been handled, has not been helpful.
Well, I'm going to give Dennis McShane 20 seconds on this because he didn't write a book about it. So go on, Dennis.
Four books.
Well,
Never mind.
exactly.
Look, Joe, you're not going to get the average English working man out at 4 o'clock in the morning in a Lincolnshire field pulling out leeks in February. Hasn't happened for 100, 200 years. We had access to that giant European labour market pool of
so it's all right for other people, but not for our people. That's so xenophobic.
No.
That is so xenophobic.
Well, if you paid them the wages that they would require...
Oh, I can't believe you
Jamie
just said
would go
that
out of
English
business.
people are too good to do it and that other people go...
I'm
That
sorry.
is not very European.
Ask Jamie if it's true or not.
That's awful.
Well, you know what? Also, the fact that we have relied on this European labour, cheap labour, and been drunk on the cheap labour, so which is undercutting the British workforce, has meant the British people aren't going to do it because it's not going to be worth their while, simply because they can't afford to live on the wages because we were in the EU and relying
Jamie, can
on
you
cheap
double wages?
migrant labour.
We currently have an all-British workforce, and they're young. They're all under 25. They're all very committed people, and so I mean, there are young people out there for whom agriculture would be a very bright future, but maybe the education system isn't selling it in the way that they should.
Well, there you go. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. That's with us meteorologist and British Weather Services Jim Dale, Lois Perry, director of Car26, landowner and columnist Jamie Blackett, and also Dennis McShane, former Labour Minister for Europe. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we will continue with our Great British Debate. So I'm asking, is net zero to blame for supermarket shortages? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also former Labour MP Stephen Pound. Then, at 5 o'clock, it is this week's difficult conversation. Social media influencer Ollie London will be joining me live in the studio to tell me about his struggles with self-identity after detransitioning back to a man after spending 6 months as a transgender female. He will be live. First, though, let's get your latest news headlines.
"4:33 I'm Ray Addison. Ireland's Taoiseach Leo Varadkar says a deal on the Northern Ireland Protocol could be made in the next few days, but there's still a gap in negotiations. It comes as the Prime Minister faces criticism after proposing a meeting between King Charles and the President of the European Commission. Ursula von der Leyen was due to continue talks with Rishi Sunak before meeting the King, but her trip has now been cancelled. Labour says it would have had constitutional implications. Most members of the G20 have condemned the war in Ukraine, except for China and Russia, who both refused to sign a joint declaration. It comes as Ukraine's president says he plans to meet China's Xi Jinping after Beijing set out a peace plan for the two countries. Volodymyr Zelensky says it would be beneficial for security around the world. The death toll from the earthquakes that hit Turkey and Syria has now surpassed 50,000. The United Nations estimates that 1.5 million people have been made homeless, with 500,000 new homes needed. President Erdogan is pledging to rebuild within the year, but experts are warning not to put safety before speed. And hundreds have gathered in County Tyrone to demand an end to violence in Northern Ireland after the attempted murder of an off-duty policeman. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was shot outside a sports centre on Wednesday. He remains in critical condition. 5 suspects have been arrested. Detectives say the incident is being treated as terror-related. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back to Nana in just a moment.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
So welcome back. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's fine because we've got loads on the way. It's coming up to 38 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, it is time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is net zero to blame for food shortages? Now, poor harvests in Spain and North Africa due to the cold weather means that there's been a bit of a farming crisis because we haven't been able to get the produce that we would normally get from them. Plus, there's been a crisis in this country in terms of farming, which has been caused by high energy costs, which has led to the lack of fresh produce. And since the UK left the EU, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, which is otherwise known as DEFRA, has replaced the EU's Common Agricultural Policy with the Environment Land Management Scheme. And the new scheme gives farmers financial incentives on condition that they adopt higher environmental and sustainability standards in line with the net zero green agenda. So the high standards include things like the preservation of trees, shrubs and wildlife, which is all very laudable, but often to the detriment of encouraging production of food itself. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is net zero to blame for food shortages? Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also former Labour MP Stephen Pound. I'm going to start with you, Stephen. Look, you've heard what we said. They've created all these things. You know, a lot of the land is now being for solar panels and wind farms and stuff like that, which could well be more profitable to do that than actually grow food.
Absolute, total, 100% nonsense.
Is it now?
Absolutely. Look.
Well, Jamie, who wrote the article in the Telegraph, didn't seem to think so.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I've read the article in the Telegraph, and there's a smidgen of reality in there. But there's nobody is saying in this country you've got to stop growing palm.
But he's a farmer, so you're saying that a farmer who's actually a dairy farmer, as he pointed out, who employs people and so on and so forth, is talking absolute nonsense.
Dairy farmers do not know, obviously, about.
Well, what kind of farmer are you then, seeing as you know more?
Farmer Giles. Come on.
Well, you're a farmer. What are you?
No, I've got an allotment.
Right. So you, because you have an allotment, know more than dairy farmer who's written an article about net zero.
Let's just get one thing.
Fair enough, Stephen.
Sorry, let's just get a couple of things
Carry
straight.
on.
Sustainable farming does not mean a reduction in product. You can actually still produce great quantities of food with a sustainable way of growing, and you can be more animal friendly. The real problem we have here in this country is twofold. One is we expect to eat tomatoes at Christmas, which is not natural, it's not right, and we shouldn't be flying them in from South America or Kenya. We shouldn't be doing that. The second thing is, well, no need to be personal, but, the other thing is the supermarkets in this country are acting like Dick Turpin. They are holding up the producers. Where I have entire sympathy with all farmers, agricultural, arboreal, dairy farmers, all of them, is the way that the supermarkets are actually, well, I was going to say they've got them by them, and it's totally wrong. So what we need to do in this country is to say, do we really want to fly in roses from Ecuador? Do we really want to fly in, lamb from New Zealand. We should actually have a proper, sustainable farming system. We should have food security in this country. And if that means farming in a sustainable way, all well and good. But nobody is saying that we should carpet over these great green deserts or these great acres of barley that we're growing in East Anglia with solar panels. Don't forget, you can have solar panels and you can grow food.
OK, Lizzie Cundy.
You say tomato, I say turnip. What? No, I have to say, look...
Turn it up.
Turnips. I mean, who eats turnips? Do you eat turnips?
Teresa Coffey, I think she
Yes, I know.
Just telling us
going to make some nice turnips tonight. No, on a serious note, net zero.
That's what I said earlier.
Net zero is to blame. And net zero is hurting our economy as well, which you know, Stephen. I know you know this. Trees are favoured in place of crops and animals. And I'm lucky. I live in a rural area and I'm next to a farm shop and we have plenty of produce, very luckily. But thanks to net zero, Target's acres of productive land continue to be given over to solar farms. Correct? You agree? That's true.
It is true, Stephen.
That's true, Stephen. So you can deny it as much as you want.
Hang on a second. We still have the capacity to be self-sufficient in food in this country.
Well, evidently not in terms of tomatoes and things where we have to import.
Well, hang on a second.
Grow them ourselves.
Hang on a second. We can grow tomatoes all year round. I mean, I'm forcing I'm forcing my rhubarb at the moment, and there's all things you can do there, but you need energy. Now, the thing about growing, we've got aquaponics and polytunnels and all those things. We could grow fruit and vegetable the year round, but the energy costs are very, very high.
And you know why the energy costs are very high? There are
because
green
the government's
levies.
totally incompetent.
Exactly.
And we're heading towards net zero, removing energy that we have underneath our feet and within our own area.
Let's start hydraulic fracturing now. I mean, America is currently self-sufficient in energy because of hydraulic fracturing. Why on earth are we just walking past bags of gold by the side of the road and saying we don't want to touch them? Insane. We should actually have hydraulic fracturing. We should actually have...
Well, could you just very briefly explain to people what hydraulic fracturing is?
Yeah. It's where you actually release gas from below the soil.
So it's fracking?
That's if you want to call it that.
It's fracking, it's fracking, yeah.
I didn't think you believed in fracking last time we were on. You believe in fracking,
I do,
Stephen?
Passionately. Absolutely. I'd be out there with a pickaxe myself, given half the chance.
That'd be interesting.
That would be very interesting. Can I just raise another point?
Farmer Stephen.
Yeah, Farmer Stephen.
On his allotment of no fixed farm at all.
With his large turnip. Another point. Can I just say something that none of the panellists have mentioned? A food issue. 9.5 million tonnes of food is wasted in a single year in the UK, and households throw away 6.6 million. So how is it when people are struggling to buy food and apparently there's a lack of food on the shelves, this can happen?
Partly because of the Best Buy nonsense. What is it? A lot of the more sophisticated supermarkets are no longer saying that, you know, they're not chucking the food away at 10 o'clock. I mean, you know, my kids used to work in the local Waitrose when they were in sixth form, and at about 5 to 10, there'd be a great, massive crowd of people out there, you know, like the beginning of the marathon. And the minute 10 o'clock struck, zoom, in they'd go to get the food. And it was ridiculous because it was perfectly good food. But don't forget, we got the Felix Project, we got a whole load of groups who are actually taking the food, which...
The Felix Project, very briefly, just tell people what that is.
The Felix Project is a charitable organisation that takes food from supermarkets by agreement with them and actually distributes it through food.
Yeah, but that's not why the shelves are empty. I mean, I hear you, that's interesting, but they're not going to take... We're talking about why.
No, you said
one we're trying to incorporate... Well, that's why I wanted to know what it is, because you're talking about
hold it, hang on a second. Some of the shelves are empty of some of the fruit and veg. Not all of the shelves.
No, we know that, we know that.
And so, you know, if you go down to Southall Vegetable Market today, you can buy all the tomatoes and that you want. But where are they coming? They're coming from the Canary Islands and places like that.
But what we're saying is the reason that we are experiencing these kind of shortages are simply because, of course, energy prices, which are ridiculous, and also the fact that we are driving our farmers away from producing actual food. And if you look at this on a bigger scale, and lots of farmers go along with this net zero stuff, then we will find that we will have to import food, which doesn't make any sense because there's more travel, there's more everything, carbon dioxide going to the air, bringing the food...
Is net zero really going to work when we're all going to possibly go hungry?
Let's get one thing absolutely straight. Nobody is going to hold a shotgun against Farmer Giles' head and say, stop growing fruit and veg because we're going to have to put...
Yeah, but the government environment land management scheme isn't working. It's cutting productivity.
Lizzie, sorry.
Sorry, I was just saying the government environment land management scheme is actually biased. It's cutting productivity. And this is the fact.
It's about productivity, not about reducing productivity.
But it's not working, is it?
Right.
The net zero's hurting
It is
us.
working.
It's not working.
It is working.
Not working. Right, let's move on.
Is net zero's going to work and we'll go hungry? Thanks very much, Stephen.
Well, that's not till 2030, don't forget.
Net zero equals what's on the shelves at the end. Yeah. Right, well, this show's nothing without your views. Let's welcome our great British voices to their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. This hour, to head over to... I love having a chat with Lee Harris in Bristol. He's a regular great British voice. He's always got something to say, sensible to say. Lee, come on, just give us something sensible, because we've been listening to Stephen Pound.
I think you've been saying some sensible things, Nana. I agreed with what you were just saying, but it seems to me the supermarket shortages are being caused by a number of things, and without a doubt, these crazy and expensive net zero policies are certainly not helping. And just to add, by the way, despite the repetitive, boring Ramonas, if you listen to the experts, it has very little, if anything, to do with Brexit. This immediate food shortage. I haven't. Just to be clear about this. I have no problem in principle with net zero, but the time frame and the way that it's being done is a joke. It's completely unnecessary. Not only is it impoverishing farmers and the nation as a whole, it's clearly playing a significant role in food shortages. As you said, Nana, acres of productive land is being used more and more for solar farms. I'm not surprised in the slightest, and I'm sure you probably remember me saying about the civil service, I'm not surprised in the slightest to read that our woke-infested civil service, who are completely obsessed with net zero, are focusing on, sustainability rather than food production. So trees are favoured in place of crops and animals, which is just clearly idiotic. We seriously need a change in strategy, and the government has got to just boot this net zero into the long grass. People are struggling, and it'll be an easy vote winner.
Well, listen, Lee, thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. That is Lee Harris. He's our great British voice, speaking so much sense. Right, today I'm asking, is net zero to blame for food shortages? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Lottie says our food shortages are down to overpopulation and constant concreting over of agricultural land. More people means more flooding, more sewage, more waste and less land, less water, less food. Our food security, like energy security, should be a priority, not an afterthought. As Stephen says, I'm surprised the media and the left aren't blaming food shortages on the mini budget. That's true, I like it. Dan says there is plenty of fresh fruit and veg here in France. Yes, Dan. Well, thank you for watching in France. Anyway, very pleased to have your company. Right, there's also a poll up on Twitter throughout the show, and I'm asking, is net zero to blame for the food shortages? It's a bit Brexity. Currently, it's 59% say yes, but 41% say no. Well, if you just join me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll be talking to Ollie London. He's my difficult conversation. He's talking about his struggles with self-identity after detransitioning back from a man to a transgender female. He'll be live at 5. And then, coming up next, it's Royal Roundup time with royal biographer Angela Levin, who'll be giving us her latest on the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. You won't want to miss that.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. Prince Harry and Meghan's approval rating has dropped significantly in the States, even plummeting past that of Prince Andrew. And the Queen Consort has spoken out against the proposed changing of Roald Dahl's works. Well, every Saturday I'd love to give you a rundown, and who better to do that than royal biographer Angela Levin. Angela, welcome to the studio.
Hello.
It's good to see you. Angela, gosh, there's so much to dig into. Where should we start?
Harry and Meghan.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. Well, it seems that Harry is sticking to the fact that if he doesn't get a personal apology, he's not coming. But it's quite obvious that the King and Prince William won't do that. William is still incredibly angry with him. And you can't have the King give in to someone who's been very, very rude about him, very unkind, and broken into his privacy. So I think they're in a dead end. But I think that the royal family will win because they can't otherwise. But he's going to look very silly. Nonetheless, he seems to be carrying on with selling himself, and I just have to check what he's doing. He's going to do a live stream event, and he's going to talk about living with loss and personal healing. And may I advise everyone to take no notice, because he must be the worst person in the world to help people like that. He's been very depressed. He's blamed everybody else and not himself, even if it's something that he couldn't have done anything about, because unfortunately he couldn't control his mother and the accident. But he hasn't moved on. It's quite obvious that he hasn't moved on about anything. So to have him advising people, and apparently he's going to answer certain questions. They're going to be obviously chosen. But it's almost hilarious, isn't it?
I hear he's also giving a copy of his book, Away.
It's not Where, Spare, not Where.
But he's apparently giving away a copy of his book as well. And people, I think it's £17, and you can pay an extra £2 for something else. And he's going to be talking about his... And it's like, look, I don't think they've got anything else. Have they got any other capital value than that? Because they're trying to trade on more. But I'm sorry, but I think it's the end of the road for them.
Yes, I think so too. And they're actually very pompous, because an aide spoke on behalf of Harry when he was asked yet again if he was coming or not. And he said because they haven't had the invitation, they don't know how to organise their itinerary on that day. Now, have you ever heard of any such nonsense? I wanted to say, I can tell him it's 11 a.m. on Saturday, the 6th of May. If you come over, you will be let in. But, I mean, the arrogance and that sort of pomposity of actually throwing it back and saying, you know, we haven't had the invitation yet. Nobody's had the invitation. They haven't even had save the date. So he's just he's stuck into pomposity.
Well, he can't say... Because if he says no, everyone will go, all right, yeah, fine. And then we'll move on. Yes. If he says yes, everyone will be like, well, why?
I don't think we want them.
I don't want to see them here.
I think they've got the marvellous excuse of Archie's 4th birthday, and so they can stay there, have a lovely party for him. A child of 4, of course, doesn't know when his birthday is. You could put it off a week or a month. They wouldn't be aware of that necessarily. But actually, there we are. They could have a very nice time, and that is... It's not a good excuse, but it was a positive excuse.
Do you think that's why the King picked that date specifically? Because he could have potentially picked another week.
No, I think it was they're always so busy that it's get their engagements done so far in advance, 1 or 2 years in advance. So they were obviously sorting out what a good day would be, and I think he wanted to do it as quickly as he could.
But they've done other things, haven't they, on the birthdays? and that's sort of given Harry and Meghan a comfortable excuse. Do you think he's done it to give them an excuse that if they don't come, they can say, oh, well, actually, we're celebrating our son's birthday? Do you think
I don't think he's that sort of man, actually. Because no, I don't think the king is. I mean, he's also a father, and he loves Harry, and he will still always speak to him and try to sort of heal things. But he can't do this because this isn't a family event. It's a state event. So he has to stick to what proper procedure is. But I think he's a good, gentle man who would actually not sort of try and be manipulative like that.
Do you think? I think that would, he's sort of being kind, so that if they said no, they would have a way out. I thought that's what I was thinking. But maybe, and I was.
One of us is probably right.
One of us is right. Hey, Charles, which one of us is right? Let us know. Email us. Yeah. Wouldn't that be funny if you did? Anta, what about Camilla, Queen Consort? You've written the book.
Yes, I wrote her biography. Yes.
Yeah.
I think this is wonderful. I think this is somebody who's using their position, and she's now got a very important position that can stop nonsense. I mean, the nonsense is with Roald Dahl's book, where they're changing all sorts of words and putting in some that don't make any sort of sense but won't upset anybody. And she said she has an annual gathering of authors to celebrate her book club, which she started in the pandemic. And that her speech was that, you know, you can't take away the magic that you can read. You can't take that away and just have it, well, she didn't say clonky, but that's really my word for it. And it just shows you how she can have an important effect. But the other thing is that some people will say, look, she's interfering, she's getting too political, she's getting too involved. But I think that's very important because the Roald Dahl Magic charity is one that she is president of, and they look after children who are fatally ill, and she makes a Christmas party for them. So she's very involved in it. It's not just her speaking because she likes reading. This is important to help a charity and make sure that it is respected.
Well, that's what we want the royals to do, isn't it? It's not necessarily political, it's just something protecting the integrity of something that is an original, like almost a tradition, which is what they are ultimately, the authenticity of something like that. I mean, what's your view on actually changing words in books anyway?
I think it's shocking. I mean, I think that somebody who writes it wants it there. I think if there's something that then is illegal, I quite understand that coming out.
Yeah.
But it's the feel that the author wants to get across. And his work is so popular that now, I mean, she's won it because the publisher are going to bring back natural 17 of his books that are in the original language. But they're going to present these as well, and I think that's wrong. I don't think they should be allowed to.
Yeah,
I mean, children have got to understand that life is hard, and if you don't quite like it, or you don't like the word fat, well, you know, it's just too bad.
It's enormous, which I don't think is much nicer. And what about Prince Andrew now and his 30-room home? He doesn't want to shift from it.
He said, he's let it be known that he is not going to leave. He pays £250 a week for this home. And the Queen, his mother, left him, gave him just under £3,000 £100,000, that's right, every year. And Prince Charles, King Charles, has stopped that.
Really?
So he's very, very angry, furious, and said he's not leaving. Well, I think he should, because if both children have gone, lots of people downsize, so it doesn't look shameful. But he wants him to spend his own money, which I think is quite right. I think the royals, assuming everything is paid for them, I think that's quite wrong. They've got to learn a lesson that actually if they have money, they have got to spend it for themselves. And I don't see any reason why he couldn't go and live in Mayfair with his ex-wife. She's just bought a house worth £5 million. And be happy there.
Exactly. You'd think, wouldn't you? Angela Levin, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming to talk to me. That is royal biographer Angela Levin. This is GB News. We're on TV, online and on digital radio. More to come in the next hour. Well, it is 5 o'clock. If you've just joined me, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. On the way, I'll be speaking to influencer Ollie London, who is currently in the process of detransitioning. Yes, and for the Great British Debate this hour, is Shamima Begum the UK's responsibility? All of that after your latest news headlines.
It's 5 o'clock. I'm Ray Addison. Ireland's Taoiseach Leo Varadkar says a deal on the Northern Ireland Protocol could be made in the next few days, but there's still a gap in negotiations. It comes as the Prime Minister faces criticism after proposing a meeting between King Charles and the President of the European Commission. Ursula von der Leyen was due to continue talks with Rishi Sunak before meeting the King, but her trip has now been cancelled. Labour says it would have constitutional implications. Speaking exclusively to GBNews, the Foreign Secretary said the government was looking for cross-community support for any deal.
We remain focused on the outcome rather than the method, and the outcome is to protect Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom, to make sure that people and businesses and the political representatives of those people in Northern Ireland are comfortable with the resolution, whilst also making sure that we protect the UK internal market. Those are very much our motivations. That's what will drive our actions.
Most members of the G20 have condemned the war in Ukraine, except for China and Russia, who refused to sign a joint declaration. It comes as Ukraine's president says he plans to meet China's Xi Jinping after Beijing set out a peace plan for the two countries. Volodymyr Zelensky says it would be beneficial for security around the world.
It's correct to think that if there are already thoughts that somehow correspond to respect for international law, territorial integrity and some security issues, I believe we should use this and work with China on this matter. Why not? I want to believe that China will be on the side of a fair peace, which means on our side. This is very important to me. I really want to believe that China will not supply weapons to Russia.
The death toll from the earthquakes that hit Turkey and Syria has now surpassed 50,000. The United Nations estimates that 1.5 million people have been made homeless, with 500,000 new homes needed. President Erdogan is pledging to rebuild within the year, but experts are warning not to put safety before speed. Well, here, a 3.7 magnitude earthquake was felt in South Wales last night. The British Geological Survey says it hit Bryn Mawr near Crickhowl just before midnight, with the tremor felt as far away as Cardiff. Residents on social media have described being woken up to their whole house shaking. Hundreds have gathered in County Tyrone to demand an end to violence in Northern Ireland after the attempted murder of an off-duty policeman. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was shot outside a sports centre on Wednesday. He remains in critical condition. 5 suspects have been arrested, and detectives say the incident is being treated as terror-related and could be connected to the new IRA. The Defence Secretary says he's confident that the troubled project to build nearly 600 Ajax fighting vehicles has now turned a corner. The £5.5 billion programme has faced criticism over severe delays and technical issues. After nearly 13 years, it's yet to deploy a single tank. Ben Wallace says soldiers are now being trained in how to use them and hopes that they'll be active in the military within the next 2 years.
When I took over as Secretary of Defence 3.5 years ago, this was a troubled programme. It started its life in March 2010, and I was determined that we were either going to fix this or have to find alternatives. And so we put a lot of effort into it. We worked with General Dynamics, the prime contractor, and with the Army. And I think after its user trials that it completed at Christmas time, it started to turn a corner.
Thousands of displaced Ukrainians are being given the chance to go to the Eurovision Song Contest in May. Around 3,000 tickets will be made available to those who are currently living in the UK. Liverpool has been chosen to host on behalf of Ukraine, who won last year. The government has announced £10 million in funding to make sure that the event showcases Ukrainian culture. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Nana in just a moment.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also former Labour MP Stephen Pound. Still to come, at 5, it's my difficult conversation. Now, social media influencer Ollie London will be live in the studio. He'll be talking about his struggles with self-identity that eventually led him to detransition back to a man after spending 6 months as a transgender female. He'll be live in the studio to challenge the very core of the woke gender ideology movement. That's in just a few moments. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Shamima Begum the UK's responsibility? The former ISIS bride, Shamima Begum, lost her legal challenge over the government's decision to revoke her British citizenship. So should she be allowed to try again? I'll be joined by the man who spent over a year with her in a Syrian camp, journalist and filmmaker Andrew Drury. As ever, you can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. So it is time for this week's difficult conversation. Influencer Ollie London. Now, he is in the process of detransitioning back to a man after spending 6 months as a transgender female. He underwent 11 surgeries in one day to make his features more feminine. And Ollie says that he was bullied growing up, which influenced his decision to transition. He's now admitted that he regrets his choice and has claimed that the woke culture is negatively impacting upon those who deemed vulnerable in society, causing them to make these kind of decisions. The actor and singer is in the process of releasing a memoir entitled Detransition, detailing his plights from marrying and divorcing a cardboard cutout of a Korean pop star to self-identifying as a Korean woman. With his book, he now hopes to warn others about the dangers of transitioning. And I'm pleased to say that Ollie joins me live in the studio. Ollie, come on, Ollie, talk to me about marrying a cardboard cutout. What the hell were you doing?
You know, people took that so seriously.
Did
it was
they?
just a bit of fun. It was a joke. You know, people.
So it was a joke?
It was a joke. People took it so seriously. I wasn't actually married to a cardboard cutout. It was just, you know, I was having fun. I was in Vegas. I was drunk, and I was like, why not?
So you did, but it wasn't legally binding, was it?
It wasn't legally binding. You can't seriously marry a cardboard cutout. But, you know, at the time, you know, people seemed to think it was real, and I just kind of went along with it.
That's quite good fun. It's good value. So, Ollie, talk to me about your childhood, because you say that what actually sparked you into this was the fact that you were bullied as a child.
Yeah, so there was the bullying aspect. So as a teen, I always used to get bullied about the way I looked. And as a kid, I did used to play with Barbie dolls. You know, I didn't used to do traditional boy things. So I didn't used to play football or rugby. I was more interested in Barbie dolls and even dressing up in girls' costumes and stuff. So I always questioned my identity. People, when I was at school, used to say, you know, I was ugly or I didn't look very good or I was more feminine. So that really affected my self-confidence, and it led me on this journey to kind of try to change the way I looked and change my identity.
So your appearance, this isn't the only sort of... When did you start deciding to change your appearance? And what was... Because often there's a trigger point when somebody sort of goes, oh, I'm really upset, somebody said something or something happens, and then you do something.
Right, so I basically, because of the bullying and stuff, I always wanted to change my nose. I used to get called, you know, I had a big nose and stuff. And I went for one surgery. I was only planning to have one surgery back in 2013, and the surgery went wrong. So when I had to get another one, that went wrong. So it kind of became a snowball effect. And then I kind of became addicted, and I was like, let me change everything. And then I really struggled with my identity. I was questioning who I was. I was living in Korea, and I was thinking, you know, I want to have a certain aesthetic to fit into this particular society I'm living in.
So how old were you when you did the nose job?
So the nose job was actually at 23, and I've had 32 surgeries in total. I've gone under the knife about 11 times under anaesthetic and stuff, and now I've kind of quit. You know, I've got to a point where last year I've become transgender. I'd always struggled with my gender. I had gender dysphoria, and I was questioning myself, and I had facial feminization, and it gave me a temporary happiness. After a certain period of time, I realised, you know, there's more to life than just having surgery. There's more to life than trying to, you know, change myself. I need to find happiness from within. So I was going to therapy, I was going to church, and it really kind of helped me get perspective in life and what's important.
What was it that made you think that you wanted to be a woman? Because that's what, you know, people say, oh, I felt like a woman. Well, even I'm a woman. I don't know what that feels like. I just feel like me. And I don't buy into all the stereotypes of what a woman is supposed to be. What was it that made you feel that you wanted to change your gender?
Well, it was, you know, I got to a point where I'd had surgery and I still wasn't happy. And then I used to look back at my childhood and think, OK, as a kid, I used to like playing dress up with the girls' clothes in the costume box that I had at my house and stuff. And I always used to think I was more feminine, think I was more girly, and people would always say I was more girly. So that was really reflecting my mind. And I'd got to a point where I'd done all these surgeries, I wasn't happy, and I was thinking, this is what I'm missing. It must be because, you know, I'm meant to be transgender. You know, everyone says I would look better as a woman, I, you know, feel better as a woman and stuff. So I've got to a point where I was like, you know, maybe that's what I'm missing in life, and it wasn't
So
the case.
what were the checks and balances for you when you went to you know, did you have a psychiatrist there, and what was there for you to support you in your decision?
So, you know, I obviously had a good doctor. I went to Turkey and stuff, so they did a lot of checks on me and stuff, so that they were very good. But I've had doctors in the past that will literally just, you know, you meet them, you have a 10-minute consultation, the next day you're having surgery. So not every doctor has checks and balances. What we're seeing now, the issue we have with the Tavistock clinic that's finally being shut down, there are no checks and balances. They're fast-tracking children onto hormones, puberty blockers and surgeries. And that's the real harm, you know. They're often misdiagnosing kids, you know, that might have an eating disorder, they might have body dysmorphia. They're misdiagnosing them, fast-tracking them onto this kind of process of transition. And it's really harmful, and there's no long-term research to see the effects this is having on children's bodies.
So when you hear, you know, obviously Nicola Sturgeon's gender reform bill, which was obviously the end of her, which it should have been because it was the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. When you hear of people, the sort of language turning into this direction, I mean, you know, you've got the likes of Sam Smith going with they, and you've got people who say, oh, I now identify as a woman, and getting on the path of surgery and things like that. What is your thought of what's going on?
Well, firstly, it's very disrespectful to women what's going on right now. I mean, look at what Nicola Sturgeon was doing. She caused so much harm to women. You know, women shouldn't have to be in fear of going to the toilet, you know, or going to a changing room. They should feel comfortable, they should feel safe. So the fact that Nicola was pushing those rules, and then we had transgender people in women's prisons, and these were very violent criminals, you know, they'd committed some terrible crimes and stuff. So we shouldn't be putting women at risk. We also shouldn't be, you know, indoctrinating children. We see in some schools they're teaching about gender or sex education to, you know, kids that are 6 to 10 years old and stuff, and they're kind of targeting them. And I've just got back from America, and the problem is a lot more severe there, kind of like in Scotland. You know, so many schools are pushing this on kids, and if you dare to question it, you're labelled transphobic. So that Nicola Sturgeon was trying to use the argument that people are transphobic for criticising her, but really most of those people were concerned women, worried about their safety, also worried about children being pressurised to transition when, you know, they maybe wouldn't have thought about that otherwise.
Well, I mean, some schools are pushing a sort of level of this ideology and going along with it, and they are in parts of Scotland. So I have actually read about the sort of ideology that is sort of asking children about what gender they are, giving them questionnaires as early as 8 and so, and saying which gender, and then giving them 4 options, which hasn't been agreed by the parents. And I know a lot of parents weren't happy about that, as a lot weren't happy with Nicola Sturgeon with her thoughts. But what do you think about this? Because I know that you were interviewed by Tucker Carlson, and you've also been talking to, it was at the Senate that you were talking to the Americans, because they were planning to do something similar to what Nicola Sturgeon was doing, which is actually removing the need for any medical diagnosis.
Right, what they were doing was actually worse. So it was in the state of Washington, so I spoke before the Senate. In a hearing, they were trying to pass a bill that would remove parental consent for medically transitioning children. But not just that, these were specific children that were either runaways or in the foster care system or in the shelter system. So they were extremely vulnerable kids, and they were trying to give these kids the power to make the decision to, you know, change their gender and medically transition, and without the parents even knowing. And that's really, really bad. You know, and now we're starting to see thousands and thousands of teens have detransition regrets. You know, they've been put on hormones, they've had surgeries, and it's just heartbreaking. And, you know, I've wrote about all of this in my new book, discussing all these issues that we're having across the world, and, you know, how wokeness has really become so toxic that we can't even question a child being medically transitioned or mutilated now.
So how far have you gone in your detransitioning? How far did you go, and now how far are you coming back?
Well, luckily I didn't take hormones or anything like that, but I did have facial feminization and stuff. And, you know, the first step for me, I cut all my hair off and stuff. I'd been going to the gym, working out, and really I think a lot of it's in the mind. You know, if you try to have a healthy mind and stuff and think positive. So I'm going to church, I've been writing, which is kind of a form of therapy, you know, writing about my life and writing about these issues because, you know, I want to help people. You know, I've got an insight into this world, you know, how it feels to go through this. And I want to warn parents, you know, just because a girl might be a tomboy, it doesn't mean that that child should be put on harmful testosterone or estrogen. You know, we shouldn't be doing that. So, you know, this wokeness has kind of caused a problem in the sense that we can't even call these things out anymore.
Are you going to do any more surgery to feminise yourself anymore, or get rid of the feminised?
Yeah, you know, I'm trying not to do surgery because at the end of the day, it wasn't answering my problems. And, you know, the more surgery I do, the more unhappy I am. So I've kind of got to a point now, I do look very feminine and stuff. I have questioned it.
I don't think you look that feminine.
Oh, thank you. Well, I did when I had the hair and stuff and the makeup. But, you know, I have questioned that. But I'm just thinking, you know, it's much better just to find self-acceptance from within. And that's more important.
And also, the thing that you said, looking feminine, is an objective thing. I might think that you look feminine. Somebody might think that you don't.
Right.
It is not a set thing. Looking feminine doesn't... There isn't a set, oh, that is definitely feminine.
Right.
And I think the problem here is that we have these narratives and these stereotypes that if you don't conform enough towards it, then you might think you're something else, which... It's up to you to find your place in it. Do you feel that you've found your place?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm the happiest ever, and you know, I want to use. You know, I've been through a lot of identity struggles and stuff. I've kind of. It's almost like self-harming doing all that surgery to oneself. So you know, I've come out of that now, and I want to use that experience to help people because we really are in a crisis right now. I mean, look at Scotland when they had men in women's prisons. That is insane. And then when women dare to question it, like J.K. Rowling, they're immediately cancelled. So, you know, I feel like we need more voices speaking out and, you know, my book's covering all of these issues and, you know, what parents can do, what's happening to children right now because we're seeing a dramatic increase. You know, of course, we had trans people in the 80s, in the 50s, there are examples, but, you know, we're seeing this sharp increase in the last kind of 10 years, especially since COVID. And I think social media has a big responsibility. When you go on TikTok, you see so many people, you know, these TikTok influencers that are men and they're promoting tampons and they're mocking women, they're doing stereotypes of women. And, you know, that it's offensive to women, but it's also harmful to the people that consume those videos every single day because they start to believe that that behaviour is totally normal and they can be like that person as well.
What do you think the government should be doing about this, though? Because, you know, we are now... You have to be careful. If you say anything, there's a sort of a backlash towards you or something. I mean, I'm not afraid of it. I don't care. I know what I think. And I think a man is a man, a woman is a woman. If you want to try and change genders in terms of the physical, the actual anatomy, that's... You can change the look of it, but you're not going to change the physiology. So
I completely agree. And I love the fact you're so outspoken. You know, I've seen your monologues online talking about what it is to be a woman. And, you know, we shouldn't even be questioning the definition of women. It's plain and simple. You're a biological woman. If you want to change yourself, have some surgery and stuff, do it as an adult. That's on you, but, you know, please don't take away the rights of other people, you know, the rights of women, or, you know, what we're seeing now is so many children being, like you said, being taught gender and pronouns and sex education in school, which is just so wrong.
Well, I don't think it's the school's place to be doing that at all. I think stick with the facts, teach them English, French and all the things they're meant to do, teach them that well.
Not gender.
Not gender. They're going to work it out for themselves in time. Well, Ollie, listen, so the book is called, talk to me very briefly about the book and where people can get hold of it.
So the book is called Detransition. I've just got back from America. I was doing a book tour there and stuff, and it's on Amazon. It's Detransition by Ollie London. It's on Amazon. It's on Simon & Schuster, Barnes & Nobles. And the book, it goes through my struggle, but it's more of a broad perspective on what's going on in society now with woke ideology, with children being indoctrinated, and how we can find a solution to this problem. And, you know, how we can love and support children while, you know, without having to kind of medically transition them. You know, a parent can love their child even if they're a tomboy, but, you know, don't resort to medically transitioning them.
Well, listen, if people want to find out more about that, they need to get hold of that book. Ollie London, thank you so much.
Thanks, Nana. I appreciate it.
For giving your time and explaining that. Thank you very much. That's Ollie London. He's a social media influencer and has his book out, Detransition. Well, this is a statement on trans equality from Stonewall at the LGBT organisation. Everyone has the right to be themselves without fear. It will take time to secure better recognition for trans people, but by increasing understanding in our communities, informing and inspiring politicians in raising the visibility of trans people's stories, we can achieve vital gains and pave the way for trans equality. Well, coming up, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should Shamima Begum be UK's responsibility? The former ISIS bride has lost her appeal challenge over the government's decision to revoke her citizenship. So what do you think? Should the UK government take responsibility for her? I'll be speaking to filmmaker Andrew Drury, who spent a year getting to know her. You won't want to miss that one. It's on the way next.
Hello, I'm Craig Snow and here is your latest forecast from the Met Office. Well, as we go through the next few days, it's set to remain largely dry and settled across the country. And that's all courtesy of a huge area of high pressure, which is not going to go very far over the next few days. It does bring in a fairly cool breeze off the North Sea. So if you live along the east coast of England or down across the English Channel, certainly wrap up warmly as we go through the next few days here. For the rest of Saturday, we'll see a lot of the cloud melt away, and that will lead to a cold and frosty night for a lot of the UK. But along the North Sea coast, we will maintain some rather cloudy skies, maybe the odd shower here. So temperatures actually staying above freezing here, but elsewhere could see lows falling down to -4 or -5 in a few spots. So then going into Sunday, very little changes actually. We still maintain rather cloudy skies across northern parts of England, eastern Scotland too. That may well filter its way a little bit further southwards as the day goes on. But elsewhere, plenty of sunshine around after that cold and frosty start, with the afternoon perhaps seeing the best of the sunshine up across western Scotland and maybe down towards Devon and Cornwall. And in that sunshine, temperatures will reach about 8 or 9 degrees, but under the cloud, and also if you're exposed to this fairly brisk wind, it will be feeling a good deal colder than that. Sunday evening then sees a repeat performance, a lot of the cloud melting away once again, leading to a fairly cold and frosty night. But along parts of the North Sea coast, again, the cloud will continue to come in, keeping things above freezing here. So a cold and frosty start to the new working week on Monday morning. Best of the sunshine as we start the day across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, down towards the southwestern parts of the country too. But then as the day goes on, this cloud across more central parts of the country will sink its way a bit further southwards. Largely dry though, but there will still be the odd shower around. And as we go into the middle part of the week, very little changes. Largely dry, often cloudy, but feeling cold in the wind.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon. It's coming up to 25 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. We are the People's Channel. Now it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is Shamima the UK's responsibility? The former ISIS bride has lost her legal challenge over the government's decision to revoke her British citizenship. Now, she'd previously appealed against the Supreme Court in 2019, but they ruled in favour of the Home Secretary on all grounds. Now, she's now lost yet another appeal against the Special Immigration Appeals Commission, and she's still looking to continue her appeals, potentially at the Court of Appeal. Now, Shamima fled East London back in 2015 to join the terror organisation as a teenager alongside two others, and she was stripped of her British citizenship in 2019 by the Home Secretary at the time, Sajid Javid. Now, the general discourse around her in recent years has been over the potential reinstatement of her citizenship. Supporters claim that she was groomed by ISIS, while others would dub her a traitor who knowingly and willingly joined the cult. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Shamima the UK's responsibility? Well, joining me now is journalist and filmmaker Andrew Drury and reality TV star and commentator Narinder Kaur. I'm going to start with you, Andrew, because you've met her, you've seen her, you've spent time with her.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on the ruling this week?
Wasn't surprised. A lot of people were surprised. I think it's... I mean, wasn't too comfortable about her citizenship being taken away, but now, after the past week or so, I'm kind of changing that opinion too.
Really, why?
I think she signifies... Or what she represents. I don't think she can come back because of what she's done and what she represents.
Narinder.
Andrew, OK, she is our responsibility. She was born in this country. Whether you like it or not, she was born in this country. She's a citizen of Britain. She's our problem.
She's not anymore.
She is our problem.
But she's not a citizen anymore, is she?
Yes, but that should never have happened. No Home Secretary should ever have this much power to revoke. No, they shouldn't have that, though, because actually...
Why not?
Because it creates a there's a two-tier system. As an immigrant's child, that means whatever crime I commit, I could be sent back to India.
Well, don't commit
and India... Well, look, what crime then? What if I do something little and they say, actually, go back to India? And India
that's not going to happen, is it, though? Because there's a Court of Appeal, there's a proper...
It sets a dangerous precedent.
No, I think, actually, what sets a dangerous precedent is allowing somebody who is a terrorist, who is supposedly a terrorist, and she's not being convicted yet. But
15.
Okay, hang on, I'm not finished.
She was clearly groomed.
Let me just finish. Who is a terrorist, who's gone off somewhere and is clearly involved in ISIS in a very heavy way. Where
we don't know
potentially she sewed suicide vests on Andrew.
We don't know that. She said
Andrew says he does. So hang on.
We do know that.
So
Andrew, it's an opinion.
Sorry, Narinder.
It's not an opinion, because they said, as you saw, they said there was a slight chance that she was trafficked. And if they produced that evidence, then the evidence that the Home Office produced must have been quite severe. Those girls had their phones, and all the people who were taken in by the SDF over there had their phones and the images, because they had selfies, pictures taken with everybody.
Metropolitan
so they
Police
had the
failed.
Evidence.
The Metropolitan Police knew, and they knew she was vulnerable. Because why didn't they stop her? Why was there no prevention?
What's that got to do with her when she was there?
Because they didn't prevent her leaving. Andrew, she wasn't prevented from leaving the country.
Let me bring something else into you.
A 15-year-old child...
Let me go. You say about the groom in the 15. Salman al-Bidi, you know who he is, don't you? He did the Manchester Arena. He killed 22 people. Right. You could say he was groomed. Because he was the same sort of story as her. He was born in England, 22-year-old guy.
But he actually did something.
Hold on. Got groomed, got trafficked out there, came back, and she did something. She sewed suicide vests.
She said she didn't.
I don't care what she says. She says loads of lies. But the fact is, if someone had those suicide vests and it detonated and killed a load of innocent children, would you feel you're saying the wrong thing?
Andrew, listen, we all agree.
Do you feel so?
We all agree
would you
that
agree
what
with
she
Salman
did,
Abidi?
her joining and leaving was wrong. The British government, the British authorities had a responsibility
it's more than wrong. She's
to
a
stop
terrorist.
her. You don't know that. We need evidence.
She joined ISIS. That is the
Let me say something now. Let me say something now. The Special Immigration Appeals Commission ruled on Wednesday that although there was credible suspicion for Begum being trafficked for sexual exploitation, the decision was ultimately the Home Secretary's. Why has the Home Secretary got this much power?
Okay.
Because that's
Job.
dangerous.
You asked the question.
And actually,
sorry.
last question.
Sorry, no. When you ask a question, I'll answer. The reason why the Home Secretary has that is because that is the job of the Home Secretary, OK? And that's what they do to protect the national interest. And it was ruled that to protect the national interest, she would lose her citizenship. She's obviously trying to get it back, and we're not having it. And as for the question, when you said about what happens, she's our responsibility.
She is.
Not really. If you go to another country and commit a crime in the other country, you're not automatically allowed to come back to the UK and serve your time here.
Well, other people have been, Nana.
Yeah,
Nana, there's been plenty that have gone to ISIS, and we don't know her crime.
Name one.
She deserves a fair trial.
You said other people. Name one.
She's had a fair trial.
There's been hundreds have come back.
Which ones?
I don't know the names because they don't give you the names, but hundreds have come back. She's been made an example.
If you could name one, that would be
She has been used and abused, Andrew, by people like yourself and the media to get their stories. No offence.
Well, you've made an accusation to Andrew.
Whoa. Hold on.
Andrew,
if I've used and abused, I've not had a penny for any.
I'm not saying you had a penny.
I met her on a day off. And the media stuff I brought back to her, I think we've given her a platform where she can actually give her point of view.
It's not a trial.
But her point of view has been changed so many times. It's not a trial, no.
Should a jury not decide? She hasn't had a trial.
She has.
She hasn't.
What do you think the High Court did? They were given evidence against her.
I'd say that's a political agenda by the Tory government, because the Tory government know that if they're the government that allow her back, they don't want to be the government
that's going to... You've got to be careful of who you're supporting. You don't know her.
You don't know her. We both don't know her.
I do know her.
He knows her better than you do.
But he's not a judge, and he's not a jury.
Yeah, but
then the evidence...
So is this trial by media? Is this trial by media? Where's the compassion for a 15-year-old girl?
Sorry.
I'd say this is cruel.
If you tone it
It's
down,
cruel.
well, take a look at the evidence, yeah? They said there was a slight amount of chance she was trafficked or sex trafficked.
They said it's credible.
But if you think even it was credible and she still had a citizenship and appeal got rejected, the evidence against her must have been so damning. They would have had pictures.
No, they said it's up to the Home Secretary.
Right. No, it wasn't. There was evidence produced by the Home Office.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the Home Secretary didn't just come in and say, don't bring her back. It was evidence.
Reasonable people will profoundly disagree with the Secretary of State, but that raises wider societal and political questions, which is not the role of this commission. It was just a commission.
So if
they will appeal this.
Let Andrew speak, please.
If I told you there's a good possibility she was in the Hezbollah, which is the religious police, and she sewed suicide vests, would you be so sympathetic?
No, I've got... Listen, do you think I enjoy sitting here trying to stick up... I'm not doing
I do believe you enjoying it.
Because I believe that anybody born in this country, and we are a civil country, deserves a fair trial. Try it in this country and let her pay the price here.
Well, listen. Perhaps the people in Syria, where she committed a lot of those crimes, would like to see her tried there. Perhaps they've taken a look at our system and realised what a soft touch we are, and they want to punish her properly, and that is that. So I'm afraid, Narendra, if you commit your crimes in another country and we decide that you're no longer going to be a citizen in this one, then I think that's...
And leave her stateless. Do you not think sometimes you've got to look at... You're going to leave her in a camp for the rest of her life?
Well...
You don't know if she's done anything.
Do you want me to have some sort of sympathy for this?
Nana, do you know if she's done anything? We should have sympathy. She was groomed.
Whoa. Do you know what? I can tell you what will happen to her. Because even if she gets her citizenship back, she could face trial in Syria and get sentenced to 20 years. Will you have a problem with that?
Yes, because she should be tried as a British citizen
because
here.
She could have caused the death of people within Syria.
We don't know that, though. We're all speculating. It's not fair. I think she deserves a fair trial.
I'm going to stop this now. She's had a fair trial, and they've made a decision based on the information that they have, which you are definitely not party to, and Andrew probably has a little bit more than you, but neither is he. And the point is, even if you've committed your crime, whether you serve the time here or there is actually not really the main thing. The main thing is that you serve the time, and in the end, I believe she should serve it in the place that she committed her crime. And
I believe she's a British citizen. I believe she's born in this country, and she was groomed and radicalised.
I have the last word.
You've got no proof of that.
I get the last word on that. Right. Well, if you just joined me, this is GB News. Welcome on board. Right, well, in a statement, Shamima's lawyers argued that her case concerns a British child aged 15 who was persuaded, influenced and affected with friends by a determined and effective ISIS propaganda machine. Her team also argued that Shamima was recruited, transported, transferred, harboured and received in Syria for the process of sexual exploitation and marriage to an adult male. Well, you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, we'll continue with our great British debate this hour. I'm asking, is Shamima Begum the UK's responsibility? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also former Labour MP Stephen Pound. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
5:34, I'm Ray Addison. Ireland's Taoiseach Leo Varadkar says a deal on the Northern Ireland Protocol could be made in the next few days, but there's still a gap in negotiations. It comes as the Prime Minister faces criticism after proposing a meeting between King Charles and the President of the European Commission. Ursula von der Leyen was due to continue talks with Rishi Sunak before meeting the King, but her trip has now been cancelled. Labour says it would have had constitutional implications. Most members of the G20 have condemned the war in Ukraine, except for China and Russia, who both refused to sign a joint declaration. It comes as Ukraine's president says he plans to meet China's Xi Jinping after Beijing set out a peace plan for the two countries. Volodymyr Zelensky said it would be beneficial for security around the world. The death toll from the earthquakes that hit Turkey and Syria has now surpassed 50,000. The United Nations estimates that 1.5 million people have been made homeless, with 500,000 new homes needed. President Erdogan is pledging to rebuild within the next year, but experts are warning not to put safety before speed. And hundreds have gathered in County Tyrone to demand an end to violence in Northern Ireland after the attempted murder of an off-duty policeman. Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell was shot outside a sports centre on Wednesday. He remains in a critical condition. 5 suspects have been arrested, and detectives say that the incident is being treated as terror-related. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Back to Nana in just a moment.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. This is GB News coming up to 39 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget as well, you can stream us live on YouTube. Now, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is Shamima Begum the UK's responsibility? The former ISIS bride lost her appeal challenge and the decision to deprive her of her British citizenship. She basically fled East London in 2015 to join ISIS. And she was stripped of her citizenship in 2019 by the Home Secretary Sajid Javid, who was there at the time. So what do you think in this hour? I'm asking, is she the UK's responsibility? Let's see what my panel make of that. Broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also former Labour MP Stephen Pound. I'm going to start with you, Lizzie Cundy.
Yep.
Now, I think I let Lorinda get away with too much there. But I thought, let us say, because it's important to have that reverse voice.
It is.
Because most people are quite happy that she's not coming back.
Yeah, and I'm happy she's not coming back. I'm not going boo-hoo, Jim. No, not at all. She made her bed. She's got to lie in it. There are consequences to her actions. She wasn't caught smoking behind the, bike sheds. She joined a death cult. It's absolutely awful. And I mean, I know people that have worked with her, that have spoken with her. They all say she's very manipulative, a very calculating woman, and I'm afraid the only people I feel sorry for are the victims, those that the poor victims like David Haynes. I've heard his daughter speak on this channel, and my heart just went out to her to think that this woman could get citizenship back here. And you know what? She's going to appeal again on whose money? Our money, the taxpayers' money. And, the BBC, I'm ashamed of, because they've tried to turn her into this celebrity. And she's trying to westernise herself just because she puts a baseball hat on and a pair of, sunglasses. Sorry, doesn't stop what she has previously done. And I'm sorry, there are consequences to her actions.
I have a slightly different perspective. I like to think that anyone's capable of redemption. I'd like to think that we all contain within ourselves the seeds of redemption, but there has to be remorse. There has to be remorse before redemption. I can't help thinking, though, that she was 15, nearly 16 when she left the country. She was statutorily raped when she arrived there because...
Well, you don't know that, though.
Well, yeah, because she had a child.
Yeah, but their law's different. Isn't their law different to ours?
Yeah,
if you go to another country, those are the laws. I don't know what their laws are.
A 15-year-old child, I think. But look...
Listen, you don't know that. You don't know the detail, but
I know the fact that she was married to a Dutch jihadi, and 9 months later she would have given birth to the baby was stillborn. But look, if you look, somebody like Mara Hindley should never, ever have been released, obviously because her crimes were so horrendous. The thing with Shamima Begum, her crimes, particularly in that that ghastly group of people who went around fingering women for not doing for not wearing the appropriate clothing and taken away to get shot. But on the other hand, do we want to say that we are better than those people, better than the jihadis, better than...
But she's a threat. Stephen, she's a threat.
That word that you used earlier... Hang on, Stephen, just apologies for that word you used earlier. We can't say that.
Which word was it?
I'm not going to say it again. I was going to apologise a second time.
Sorry, OK.
But Stephen, can you realise she is a threat? And if she came to this country, we would have to pay to monitor her. Would you like her as your neighbour? Would you like her to be next door to you?
Can I just say, do you remember Mary Bell? Mary Bell was the most hated woman in this country. She was the child murderer. She went to prison. She expressed great remorse. She was released, given a false identity, and she's now a productive, quiet member of society.
Yeah, that's fine. But
it's possible.
Yeah, but Mary Bell served her time, right? So all that's happening...
Bring her back, serve her time.
No, but why? I don't know what this obsession is with this woman to serve 20 years here or there. Why should it be any... I don't understand why people can't accept that if you've done something wrong in another country, you serve time in that country. Why do you have to come back here?
Because we have a responsibility. She was brought up in this country.
No.
I think we do.
No, that's irrelevant. Look, I'm brought up in this country. If I go to America and steal a load of things and, you know, maybe shoot up a load of people, which I would never do, you're not going to say, oh, well, we'll take her back. She's our responsibility.
Of course you could. You could serve your time in this country.
No, I couldn't. Not necessarily. They may not choose that.
I'm sorry.
And there might be a reason why they don't choose that. And the reason they haven't done it with Shamima Begum is because it's in the national interest not to.
I mean, there's any number of prisoners get repatriated to their home country.
But she's not a British citizen anymore.
Have you listened to her? Have you listened to her? She said she was unfazed at seeing the people being beheaded, seeing the heads in a basket. She was unfazed.
Also,
she has showed no remorse at all, Stephen. But let's think of the victims of Manchester. Let's think of the family of Lee Rigby. Let's think of the poor daughter, Bethany Haynes.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But she wasn't directly involved in those.
But she joined the group and supported them.
I know, but she wasn't specifically involved with those cases.
But she joined that group, which is a death cult, and she supported it. She literally said she was unfazed at seeing people be beheaded.
Yeah.
So the question is, what nationality is she? I mean, is she any nationality at all at the moment? Because from what you're saying, she is no nationality.
She's stateless.
She's stateless. OK, if she's stateless, then what's going to happen to her for the rest of her life?
I don't care.
You really don't care?
I don't give two hoots.
Stephen, she should have thought about this. Her actions have consequences.
Do you really care what happens to her?
I care about every sentient human being.
What, is this woman who apparently watched people being beheaded and sewed suicide vests?
I tell you what I hope and pray is that she can somehow actually redeem herself by showing the remorse that she should.
Well, she hasn't shown much remorse.
OK, she hasn't yet, so she's not ready.
But, Stephen, would you say that if that was your son? Think of Lee Rigby's families, and she's involved. She left to join, and this is what they are, a death cult.
I know, hang on a second. When I was in Northern Ireland, I met a lot of parents whose children had been killed, had been murdered. And the number of people who actually said, I have no malice against the killer of my child because I want to see that person redeemed.
Well, no, but they would say that for their own peace of mind and forgiveness. I mean, look, you know, you might say that... No, of course, because it's your own personal healing. I mean, if you hate, and we all know that hate makes you ill, so you've got to somehow release that hate so that you can move forward.
Hate can be toxic and corrosive.
Well, exactly, you know, it's that phrase, isn't it? It's that...
Look, the thing about it is I can't see any redeeming qualities in this young woman. She's quite clearly very economical with the truth. I mean, she quite clearly puts on an act. She quite clearly wants to reinvent herself in all sorts of ways.
Well, she's manipulative, isn't she?
I think in some ways that just shows the absolute utter naivety of this person. And I think that we in this country could be more proud if we could actually bring her back and say, look, we're not like those scumbags over there. We are going to actually...
No,
why is she out? She knew that. And are we going to have to pay to monitor her as well? It's our money.
I'm not paying for her. Right, there's nothing to...
Well, she's doomed then if you're not going to pay for her.
I'm not paying for her. We're not doing it. There's nothing without your views. Let's welcome our great British voices and their opportunity to be on the show and talk about the topics we're discussing. I've got four. Let's start with Miranda Richardson from Northampton.
Miranda Richardson?
No, it's not the one. She's in Northampton. Miranda, we do this every time. So what do you think? Come on.
Afternoon, Nana. Well, do you know what? This discussion, I don't know why, in fairness, we're still having it. She shouldn't be brought back here. She shouldn't be allowed to come back into this country. She was a massive risk. For all we know, she remains a risk. There are so many things and so many stories that aren't adding up. Are we actually prepared to do that? We've had so many instances where we've monitored people that have gone on to commit horrendous atrocities. We know that she's thought like this. So do you know what? Let's just not have it back. Let's just leave it where it is and let them deal with it.
I don't understand what the obsession was, people wanting to bring her back. Right, let's go to Jonathan Jones. There, he's in Enniskillen. Lovely, Jonathan. Talk to me.
It's interesting. I've been out mapping trees here today in Northern Ireland. Beautiful place up here. And I was chatting to some locals about this case, and they just see it as a bit of an irrelevance, really, and maybe someone who's a bit attention-grabbing. And on the other hand, I think showing a bit of sympathy and giving her an opportunity to really prove how British she is, that, you know, maybe come up here and spend some time in Northern Ireland with some proper Brits drinking tea and show to us that she's got over her bad ways.
It's very generous of you. I don't think people around her will think the same, but thank you for that, Jonathan.
The invitation is noted.
Right, next we're going to hear from Alan McNeely, who's calling in from Grimsby. Alan.
Afternoon, Nana. Absolutely not. There's no way that she should come back to this country. There was no evidence to show her being forced out of the country. The three of them plotted, left the country of their own accord. They have said in northern Syria that they want to prosecute her. So she should be prosecuted where she committed her crimes. And if she gets 20 years and she rots out there, I really couldn't care less, Nana. She joined an appalling murderous organisation. and she needs to pay for that. And, that's the end of it.
Absolutely, Alan McNeely, thank you very much. Thank you so much to all my great British voices, Miranda in Northamptonshire, Jonathan in Enniskillen, Alan in Grimsby, also John in Kidderminster. Oh, hang on, John, I haven't asked you, have I? John in Kidderminster, you haven't said anything, have you?
I offended you for a minute.
No, you just sat there in the corner. I suddenly thought, why am I saying thank you? John in Kidderminster, please, talk to me. What do you think?
Nana, my opinion is much the same as the rest of your guests. I cannot imagine why we would ever let her back in the country. The way I view it is this. She was 15, coming on 16 when she left this country. Now, my children at that age, would struggle to get to London, let alone Syria. How the hell could she do it? She must have had people that were working with her. She took 2 other young girls with her, went to Syria. As people have already said, she viewed some really horrendous things, said she really didn't give a stuff one way or another, whether she saw a few heads in a basket or not. To my way of thinking, there's no argument whatsoever for bringing her back. And I would lock her up in Syria.
Well, listen, thank you so much, my great British voices. Now, today I've been asking, is Shamima Begum the UK's responsibility? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Nancy says, no, she can't come back. I believe she has no moral compass. I agree with you. Ross says, she was born in the United Kingdom. We need to take responsibility. No, perhaps she should take responsibility. Cindy says, the court made the right decision based on evidence, not opinion. She is dangerous and should never be allowed back, born here or not. We'll keep these thoughts. Lovely to talk to you all. Great thoughts. Right, it's time for our Quickfire quiz this week. It's a part of the show where I test my panel on some of the other stories hitting the headlines right now. I'm joined by broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie, your buzzer, please. And also former Labour MP Stephen Pound, your buzzer. Right, and please play along at home. Right, let's do it. We've got 5 questions. Question 1. A woman has walked the entire length of a tube line this week, but which line was it? Was it A, Piccadilly? Was it B, Hammersmith and City? Oh, no, you can't buzz until I've finished, but you both did it. I'll give you a chance.
Naughty.
Or the Jubilee line. Now, your chance to press now. Lizzie Cundy.
I'm going to go for Piccadilly.
You're going to go for Piccadilly? Are you going to say a different one?
Jubilee.
Jubilee. The answer is B. Completely wrong.
That's only about half a mile long.
Totally wrong. Nil point. Yes, a member of the public decided to walk 15.8 miles, passing 29 stops on the Hammersmith and City line. It took around 6 hours to complete.
That's nothing.
Would you consider that?
Well, yeah, well, with the strikes on, I probably would.
You might have to.
I might have to.
Would you do that?
I've tried to walk the Central line, but I got stuck at White City.
Right, well, that's to those of you who don't live in London. You wouldn't want to do it. Question 2. One keen shopper tried to buy a large number of cucumbers as fruit and vegetables rationing has gripped the nation. But how many cucumbers did she attempt to purchase? Closest answer wins. Lizzie Cundy.
100.
100.
50.
50.
Yes!
Spot on. His personal trainer was barred from purchasing 100 cucumbers to make detox drinks for a health business at a local Aldi.
Oh, fair play.
Lisa Fairn said the manager came chasing after her to say they were simply too many cucumbers in her trolley. Is there ever too many cucumbers, Lizzie?
No, never. But she should have come to my farm shop. They've got loads of cucumbers, you see, near me, in my local shop.
Is there too many? Have you got any cucumbers on your allotment?
He's only got turnips.
I have a couple of cucumbers in the greenhouse from last year, but not this season. I've only just planted them.
You're going to get 2 at a time? Yes. Can't plant some more.
You're a bit mean with the old cucumbers.
Well, no, I do like to pinch them out as courgettes sometimes.
True or false? A grandmother in Arizona was buried in an M&M-shaped coffin.
Got to be true.
As she was obsessed with the multicoloured shaped chocolate.
Got to be true, innit?
True.
Lizzie Cundy, true. You got there before that right, isn't it? It's true. The American teacher whose initials were M&M also received the memorabilia from friends. Right. Question 4. We've got 2 more questions. Which cuisine has been ranked the most popular in the world this week? Is it A, Italian? B... No, look. Stop it.
You did it.
No, that was not me.
Is it A, Italian? Is it B, Indian? C, Korean? Lizzie Cundy.
B, Indian.
She says Indian. What do you think, Stephen?
Indian.
Press your buzzer. No, you're both right. So it's right, yes, an adventure travel company.
Korea?
Collated the data.
What, kimchi?
I want to see the evidence on that.
Social engagement across a variety of platforms. Right, and final question. Newcastle United will face Manchester United in the League Cup final for the first domestic cup final since what year? Is it...
I didn't mean to do that.
Is it A, 1999, is it B, 2007, or C, 1973? Stephen.
Oh, so 2007.
2007, Lizzie?
I'm saying it's not 1973.
Wag.
I'm saying it's a long time ago.
Let's see. It is A. Newcastle first played the domestic cup back in 1999. Did
We
you get
both
one
were
right,
wrong.
finally?
I don't think you got one right, actually.
Stephen got
I thought it was the first time a cup final had been played, not the first time Manchester and Newcastle.
Whatever you thought, Stephen, you gave me the wrong answer.
Yes, you were wrong, and you didn't get any points. I'm sorry.
Yes. Anyway, the answer.
You only got one. Only got
Be
two.
quiet.
Unruly.
On today's show, I've been asking, is net zero to blame for food shortages? And according to our Twitter poll, 56% of you say yes. 44% of you say no. Huge thank you to my fabulous panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also former Labour MP Stephen Powell. Stephen, thank you very much. And for a first time on the panel, I think you did quite well. Right, well, and thank you to you at home for your company. I will be back tomorrow to discuss the top stories. Joining me will be author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you tomorrow at 4. Don't forget to stream the show on YouTube.
Hello, I'm Craig Snow and here is your latest forecast from the Met Office. Well, as we go through the next few days, it's set to remain largely dry and settled across the country. And that's all courtesy of a huge area of high pressure, which is not going to go very far over the next few days. It does bring in a fairly cool breeze off the North Sea. So if you live along the east coast of England or down across the English Channel, certainly wrap up warmly as we go through the next few days here. For the rest of Saturday, we'll see a lot of the cloud melt away, and that will lead to a cold and frosty night for a lot of the UK. But along the North Sea coast, we will maintain some rather cloudy skies, maybe the odd shower here. So temperatures actually staying above freezing here, but elsewhere could see lows falling down to -4 or -5 in a few spots. So then going into Sunday, very little changes actually. We still maintain rather cloudy skies across northern parts of England, eastern Scotland too. That may well filter its way a little bit further southwards as the day goes on. But elsewhere, plenty of sunshine around after that cold and frosty start, with the afternoon perhaps seeing the best of the sunshine up across western Scotland and maybe down towards Devon and Cornwall. And in that sunshine, temperatures will reach about 8 or 9 degrees, but under the cloud, and also if you're exposed to this fairly brisk wind, it will be feeling a good deal colder than that. Sunday evening then sees a repeat performance, a lot of the cloud melting away once again, leading to a fairly cold and frosty night. But along parts of the North Sea coast, again, the cloud will continue to come in, keeping things above freezing here. So a cold and frosty start to the new working week on Monday morning. Best of the sunshine as we start the day across western Scotland, Northern Ireland, down towards the southwestern parts of the country too. But then as the day goes on, this cloud across more central parts of the country will sink its way a bit further southwards. Largely dry though, but there will still be the odd shower around. And as we go into the middle part of the week, very little changes. Largely dry, often cloudy, but feeling cold in the wind.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, at 9:30 on Sunday morning when I'll be asking Lord Frost, Boris Johnson's Brexit negotiator, whether Rishi Sunak can land a deal on Northern Ireland that keeps the Brexiteers happy. I'll also be speaking to the DUP's Sammy Wilson about the Unionists' demands. John Bolton, the former US National Security Advisor under Donald Trump, joins me to discuss the first anniversary of the war in Ukraine, along with Alexei Goncharenko, the mayor of Odessa. All that and more at 9:30 on Sunday.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines.
It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.